Hey, everybody. Thanks so much for spending some time with me this morning. As always, I welcome your questions, your comments. Uh, it's good to have some of this time with you, and I hope wherever you are today, you are able to experience God anew. And as I say, the questions can be serious, they can be silly. Um, we've had a little bit of both at this, and so this is your time. I don't have written notes. I don't have an agenda. It's time for you to experience whatever, to have something on your heart, on your mind, and have some conversation. Um, we can also go off on tangents, and I've done that before too, whether it's from your questions or I start talking about something, then someone raises something else, and then it just sort of goes from there. Um, so I think what I'm going to do this morning is start with something a little serious. I had someone ask me last week and asked a whole lot in a whole little bit. So I just want to take a little bit of time to try to parse some of that out, and then we can go from there. And feel free as the discussion goes on. This is to make any comments, to ask any questions, any clarification. But the person had asked about socialism, about the church, about language used for families, and just I think what it comes down to, and please feel free to clarify this if I'm wrong, but the whole political divide and debate in our nation right now, and I think in various places across the world. And so where I want to start with that is where is our focus? I think because of what is going on in our nation, that politics have become this overarching sense of impact for our entire lives. We gravitate towards a political party. And that, I remember 25 years ago when you could barely tell the candidates apart because they were so similar. It's like, well, which one do you like better? Or this one has a little bit of a different idea than that one. And now it's become such extremes that, that this notion of the embattlement of it seems all consuming. And I think part of what we need to do with all of that is take a step back and realize that we have to work together. And there are, attitudes, there's animosity, there's anger, there's all of these emotions that cloud it, that enhance our vehemence towards something. And I think part of what we need to realize is that our politics are really only a small part of what's going on in our world, and really the greater aspect of it is our own. We elect those people, and they are there, often a mirror to what is going on in our world. And I think, to me, it has become clear that we're in the terrible twos of our nation. And I say that with a little flippancy, but with a little reality too, that, in so many of the other countries in the world that are thousands of, trace their history thousands of years, we're just over 200 plus, 300 plus, and so we're, going through this notion of, still growing, still figuring it out. We have such a swath of people and of backgrounds. I remember growing up in history class and, hearing about this notion of the melting pot and realizing it's more like a stew. we don't lose our uniqueness. When you have a stew, you don't lose the uniqueness, um, but it enhances it. And so, how do we use that uniqueness? Um, and the question was raised about socialism, and I was curious. So I pulled up this definition, and it says a political and economic theory of social organization, which advocates that the mean of production, distribution, and exchange should be owned or regulated by the community as a whole. Um, I think taken to the extreme, that's the government controls everything. The government, makes that decision. But on the other hand, part of what that means is, companies have done that. When a company is owned by its employees, according to that definition, that's a socialistic company, because it's the community, it's the workers, it's those people who have a stake in it who get to make decisions about how that company functions. Um, and I think, we as a nation, um, we need to recognize that we need to care for our neighbor. And that's not a political statement, that's a biblical statement. Uh, and I think that's it. We've blurred that line of politics and religion, in that we say we want to keep them separate, but politics has oozed into religion. And in many cases, it's become, well, if you don't believe this from this political party, then you can't call yourself this. Um, and the reality is that's not true. And in fact, if we step back from politics, and if we step more on faith, that is what should be driving us to make some of these decisions, to understand it. I've heard, well, the government shut down the church, the government did this, the government's trying to get rid of religion. Let me be plain, and as plain as I can be this morning. The government will never be able to get rid of our faith. We do that. We make that decision. I remember growing up, stores weren't open before noon on Sunday. Various places weren't open. There were no sports on Sunday. And in the morning, no children's sports. We said that was okay. If enough people said, you know what, hey, this isn't okay, I'm not willing to let my child participate in this on a Sunday morning or on Sunday at all. I knew a guy where we lived in New York who, didn't go to church, but in conversations I had with him, he goes, you know what, Sunday should be a family day. Regardless of if you go to church or not, we should be able to say one day is not for anything else. And yet, we have made that decision as a people, as a culture. We have made these decisions that faith can be found only in a building, or that if we cannot agree, we break apart, we put down another church that then attacks the church that we left because they didn't see it our way. And this has been going on for hundreds of years. You can see it where I served before, and nothing about the people that are there. This happened, hundreds of years ago. But the church one of the churches that I was with, split because, and here was the major issue with why they split. One wanted to continue worshiping in German. The other wanted to worship in English. They couldn't find a way to go around it, so they broke apart and formed two churches. Go back, or fast forward ahead 100 years, they ended up coming back together and joining as one church again because both of them were worshiping in English. So, how do we change this? How do we foremost, I think it has to do with um, having conversation. It has to do with recognizing where some of this comes from and how we live into our faith more fully as part of this who we are, as part of our lives, as part of what it means for us to experience where God is calling us anew, and what does that look like, and recognizing that there are times when it won't all be the same, that it won't be avenues of, well, this or that or the other thing. It challenges us, and I think that's part of it is that, um, going back to what I said about the church, uh, there are active practicing communities in China where Christianity is illegal, but they still worship. They come together. There are worshiping communities in Muslim countries that say, it's not right. Um, and so we as America, we as the United States say that we are free, all are free to worship. And I think, if we want to merge, that notion of politics in here, the Constitution says freedom for religion. It doesn't specify freedom for Christianity. So we have to understand, as part of that stew of the United States, that we have people from various backgrounds and various understandings that can enhance us if we are willing to have some conversation. And often what we need to realize is that most religions, most faiths, most backgrounds have a lot in common. They talk about peace, they talk about justice, and they talk about care for one another. Those are central to many of the faiths. Whether or not we see that, because often, as in everything, we see extremes rather than commonality. I've been reading this really great book, and I could share it with you. It's called The World is About to Turn. And I want to just read you a passage, one of, really my favorite passage from the Old Testament is from Micah, and it's Micah 6:8, and it's Micah professing, to the people in conversation with God, and going through all of this stuff, talking about sacrifice, and what will God be happy with for a sacrifice. And Micah 6:8 comes in and says, "He has told you, O mortal, what is good, and what does the Lord require of you but to do justice, to love kindness, and to walk humbly with God." That's how we normally understand it. And as I have gone through my studies with it, I would tweak that language just a little bit, as we've talked about here, to talk about restorative justice, compassionately loving, and humbleness as we walk with God. So the author of that book says, the prophet Micah reminds us to walk humbly with God. This implies that we approach not only God, but one another with a sense of humility and vulnerability. As individuals and as a culture, we must learn to put our arrogance and sense of superiority aside, for if real and transformative change is to take place, there cannot be change without some degree of vulnerability, which implies uncertainty, risk-taking, emotional exposure, and a sense of openness. One cannot be vulnerable from a state of arrogance when we place our own power, safety, and comfort first. For those of the Christian persuasion, the person of Jesus can be an example from Philippians 2. Let the same mind be in you that was in Christ Jesus, who though he was in the form of God, did not regard equality with God as something to be exploited, but emptied himself, taking the form of a slave, being born in human likeness, and being found in human form. He humbled himself and high and that there's only so much. And the reality is there's not. The reality is there's more than enough. Uh, that I wish I would have grabbed it too. My kids have a subscription to a magazine called The Week, talking about um, how much food is thrown out, and it comes to 7 billion tons of food, I think, a year is thrown out, and people are hungry. The amount of waste, of lavishness that we say, well, if we have a bigger house, if we have a mansion, or well, this person has a home that has 20 bedrooms, but there's only 2 people living there. What's the purpose of that? When people are homeless, living on the street, people say, well, that's political, and the church should stay out of politics. That's not political, in my opinion. And if you want to disagree with me, please do. But that's biblical. We talk about we need to get back to the faith. Here's what God says: care for people, walk humbly with God. Martin Luther, who was a German monk who spurned part of the Reformation and became known for the Lutheran Church, which is where I serve it, said, God doesn't need our good works, but our neighbor does. What does that mean? What does that look like? What does that embody for us? To acknowledge that God, in the image of another, in the image of our neighbor, in the image of those that we disagree with, needs us to be faithful by serving, by caring for others, by seeing this politicalness, this divisiveness, this this thought of, well, the church closed. No, our building closed. Where I serve as pastor, we did not worship physically in the building for quite a while. And we did that for a little bit in the fall. We did some outside worship, but we have worshiped online for over a year, and we plan to continue to do that, to have hybrid worship as we've started out, where we'll be worshiping on site but also online at the same time, in conjunction, and having that community without walls. That doesn't make those who worship online any less valuable to our community than those who choose to come back on site. We are all part of the same community. And we have not stopped doing ministry. Last summer, we partnered with the Governor Mifflin School District and with Helping Harvest to be a site for families to pick up food. When there was desperate need, we were serving up to 60 families a month. We were caring for local families, and we have kept that connection with Governor Mifflin School as we have in the past. That if there is a need, they know they can call us, and that we will make sure that need is fulfilled. Every year at Christmas, we help with gifts and care for families who struggle. This year was no different. We got that taken care of. We work with care for foster children. That was taken care of. Those ministries continue to happen. Over Advent, we raised over $1,000 that was matched for Helping Harvest. And then again, for our Super Bowl of Caring, we collected over 500 cans and additional funding that went to Helping Harvest. Ministry continues to go on. And in this season of Easter, where we celebrate the resurrection, not the resuscitation of Jesus, but the resurrection of Jesus. New life, new promise, new ways forward. It doesn't mean that the scars weren't there. We heard last Sunday that, Jesus came among them and Thomas wanted to, experience, and Jesus goes, here, experience it, touch it, touch my side. That doesn't mean that wasn't there, but the risen Jesus was something new. And I think we as a church, we as a body, we as a group of believers across this nation and across the world are experiencing what does that mean for us now as we continue to move through this process, as we continue to seek out God's call for us. Yes, it's different. Yes, it's more challenging because we don't have the laws in place. And, I wonder, it was like, back then, 20, 25 years ago, when I was young, and I know Paul, who I see him on this morning, we lived in the same town. Everything was closed. Would people have come to church as often if there was stuff that was more open? I don't know. But what happened was that is the government doesn't dictate that. The government didn't dictate churches' decisions. That was churches' decisions. We made that decision as faithfully as possible to keep people as safe as possible with our understanding and what we could affirm. Where we go from here is our decision, not the government's decision. The government can make laws, can do whatever, but the Church of Christ goes beyond that. We welcome all people, we engage people, we seek to uplift them in the notion of what it means to be a community of believers, to be a stew, for lack of a better concept, to recognize being active in the world, being part of this, working together as local churches. We work with other Lutheran churches in our area and other churches as we partner with various nonprofit groups, but we did to do our midweek to do some work and for Easter morning sunrise service, various ways to be impactful in our community. And what it comes down to is God's not done with us yet. It's not about, the government, and I use this analogy with church too. We talk about the government, or the church. If you have a question about who the government is or who the church is, I want you to go to your bathroom or to your bedroom and look in a mirror. You are the church. You are part of the global church. You are part of this nation. You can make those changes. You can work to make a positive impact in this world, to let your faith shine through, to let your faith be engaged, to care for one another, to be uplifted by it all. To me, that's powerful. To me, that's vital for the church. We hear as the prophet Micah, as Paul wrote to the church in Philippians, to be humble, to follow where Jesus calls us, where God calls us, and those three things, in my opinion, encapsulate who we are called to be as the church, to work towards restorative justice for the community and the world around us, to compassionately love one another. And what I mean by that in compassion is to go beyond just serving people, to make us feel better, but to care for them so deeply that we go beyond needs, to care for them, and to walk in humility with God, to recognize that we are finite, that we will end it at some point, and that our God is infinite, our God is there for the world. And so these things that are coming up, the language that is being tossed around, the negativity and the animosity between both sides, we then, there's a song I know that talks about the silent majority. We are the silent majority. you know, we are afraid on the one side, I think, to stand up because of, of the violence that we see. And if we stand up and say this isn't right, then are we going to, be impactful of the violence? Or, if we stand up and say, well, this is what I believe, and you know, and to go from there, and that, it becomes this tightrope. So we try to keep our head down, and nobody will bother us. But I think if we are able to stand up and to not just speak what it means to be faithful in our world today, to care for other people, but to show it, to show it in our lives, not to be flashy about it, but to just say, hey, you know what? This is what I'm going to do. This is how I'm going to care for my neighbor. This is how I'm going to, uplift this family. This is what it means to me to be engaged, to serve people, to support that family in love who are struggling, who are, being treated poorly, who are being attacked because of their love for one another. And we can, stand firm in what it means that Jesus calls us to serve others, to live into this time of Easter, this time of resurrection, this time of newness. And I think this year, of all years, we can appreciate that more fully as we start to see the hope of what can be for our future, for the promise of our nation and of the world around us. So I hope that answers some of the questions. I didn't see any comments about it. Hey, if you want to disagree with me, please do. I would love, and if you want to come on, we can do that. We can hop on and I can share a screen, and we can have some conversation. In fact, I would love that. I would appreciate that. I know my colleague Rick Moore from Pastor Rich Moore from St. John's in St. Springs does a daily one with, and it's really great. His yesterday was really good. So I'll try to find that and put that in the link today, so you guys can go to that, because I really appreciated that yesterday. So thank you all. I know usually I don't go this long, but I thought we needed to go a little bit deeper today. Hey, there he is. He is on. So Rich, since you are on, if you can link that video that you did yesterday in here and drop it in the comment section, I would appreciate it. And maybe, hey, there you go. You all are interested. Maybe Pastor Rich and I can do one of those. We can hop on, and maybe once a week, or every other week or something, we can do and have some discussion and talk about that. I think that would be really cool. And as I said, I'm more than willing to have some of those conversations. That's what this time is for you, to have some of those questions. And like I said, Patty, I hope that answers some of your questions. And hopefully we can, have some more discussion about that. If it doesn't, please feel free to do some more in depth with me, and we'll move from there. Okay? I hope you guys have a blessed day and experience God anew this day and this week. Take care, everybody. Don't forget, please let me know your comments. If you were intrigued by this, like it, share it, and also, I don't know if there's a way to follow that so that you'll know what it is. But I can always mention it